take that right for granted when it's taken away from them. Ask Anthony Papa, who lost his right to vote when he spent 12 years in Sing Sing prison for delivering a package containing cocaine. His harsh punishment came under the old Rockefeller drug laws. Today, he's an activist trying to reform those laws and an author with a new book out called 15 to Life, How I Painted My Way to Freedom. In it, he reveals how finding himself through his artwork gave him hope while serving his hard time. His paintings were on display at the Whitney Museum this past week. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're talking about people, getting people out to vote. We understand 2/3 of the American people who are eligible to vote don't even cast a ballot. Yet you are someone who wanted very desperately to vote. You served many years in prison, and you could not do that even when you got out. Why not?
Right. Well, under the laws, if you commit a felony and you go to prison, you cannot vote while you're on parole in New York State. Some states, in fact 14 states, you lose that right to vote forever. So for me, when I came out, I definitely wanted to vote because I knew while I was inside, I still faced the issues that my community faced, but I was powerless to help them. So I knew how important the vote was. So I came out, I was on parole for 5 years, I could not vote. Yet I lived in South Bronx neighborhood, it was deteriorating. I wanted to exercise in some way, make a change, but I was powerless, I could not vote. For the first time, 5 years passed, I went off parole, and I actually had my right restored 2 years ago to vote.
And how did that moment feel?
It was an amazing moment. When I pulled that lever, I felt my rebirth as a citizen again, to have that power to vote.
Yet there are, you said, 14 states where felons lose their right
forever.
Forever.
Right. It's amazing.
And New York permits you after 5 years,
right,
after your parole period.
After the parole is restored, right.
Now, all of this is under any law. This is not simply under the harsh Rockefeller drug laws, which you're seeking to have change, and there are a lot of people who have been trying to get that change, because this was your first offense,
right.
And people who are sentenced under the Rockefeller laws, we should point out, some of them are getting more severe sentences than rapists and
right.
others who are committing more violent crimes.
I was a first-time nonviolent offender who was sentenced actually to 2 15-year life terms for passing an envelope with 4.5 ounces of cocaine. I brought it from the Bronx up to Westchester County. I met an individual in a bowling alley who bowled on my team, and I was doing bad. I owned a radio repair shop, and things got slow, and I needed money, and he asked me if I wanted to make fast buck, and I said, well, what do I have to do? And he said, bring this package. At first I said no because I knew he was involved with drug activity, but he came again, and I got desperate for money, and I brought it up, and I walked into a police sting operation. 20 undercover cops came out of nowhere, and I was placed under arrest. I did everything you could do wrong. I made every mistake possible. I was sentenced to 15 years to life. The judge gave me a break. I went to Sing Sing prison, where I was lost. I didn't know how to survive, a maximum security prison in Austin, New York, until the day I discovered my ability as an artist. And that's how I transcended the negativity of imprisonment. That's how I found meaning in my life through my art.
You survived through your art.
Right.
Tell us a bit about that, and as you're telling us about it, let's take a look at some of your work.
Well, my art for me was a vehicle to transcend, as I said, and one night I was sitting in my cell, 1988, after 3 years in, I picked up a mirror and I saw an individual who was going to spend the most productive years of his life in a cage, and I picked up a canvas and I painted this self-portrait, which is the cover of my book, 15 Years to Life, and actually it was exhibited this Monday at my show at the Whitney Museum of American Art. That painting 7 years later appeared at the Whitney 10 years ago in 1994, and then last week I actually went back to the Whitney with the painting.
That's the self-portrait
at the self-portrait and other paintings. I had an exhibit and spoke to an audience, and it was amazing. Rockefeller's granddaughter was there, Governor Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, who I work with now with Help USA and his Justice Center, and Larry Goldfarb, this media wizard, a hedge fund wizard I work with. We're trying to get people involved with this issue. We're bringing it to new heights. Basically, my book is a clarion call to repeal the laws.
Yet it's been a political football for for the last 3 years in Albany. The governor says it's time to change it. You hear the Bruno and you hear Silver, they all say it, yet it gets bounced around and no action taken in the legislature.
Through the political rhetoric that exists, there are human lives wasting away. And this is a point I want to make. For the last 3 years in a row, the governor, Silver, and Bruno have all said we want to change the laws, but they haven't. And the governor has become an expert dancing around the issues. I thank him for giving me my clemency, granting me my freedom, but you know, we send in the message that we're not going to give up this fight. Right now, I use my art as a vehicle. When people read my memoir, 15 to Life, they could understand what I went through and what many people go through when they commit a crime, a mistake. I made a mistake in my life. Maybe I should have went to prison, but not 15 years. That's my argument. It was a waste of human life. It was a waste of taxpayers' dollars. Money could be better spent for needy communities, to feed the homeless, to put shoes on children.
I want to ask you a question, but let me ask our director if he can find that one painting of yours showing the hands from beyond the cell,
right,
holding the American
vote, called
flag.
The Vote.
It's called The Vote.
Vote, right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I painted that because I was inside and I found out what was going on in my community. I couldn't react, I couldn't vote. So I painted this portrait of a hand reaching out of the cell, putting a vote in the ballot box, and the vote turned into the American flag. And on the bars, cell bars, you see it has all community issues, education, all the things that affect our community. And being disenfranchised, when you take that right away, it's an amazing feeling. You feel you're not part of being a citizen again. So when I had that right restored, I felt whole again, be able to speak for the people inside. Now I'm an activist. I fight for change.
So, for those Americans who take their vote for granted and someone who lost it, what message do you deliver just 9 days before this presidential election?
I get out there and vote. Exercise your right to vote, because if you lose that right to vote, it takes away from you being whole, part of your community. For me, I suffered for 12 years inside under these laws, came out, and now I can vote again. I'm actually going to vote November 2nd, and hopefully I'll continue voting till we change these Rockefeller drug laws.
And continue to speak out. Anthony Papa,
Thank you so
remarkable,
much.
True story, 15 to Life. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
That is our program for this week. If you have any comments, log on to our website at WB11.com. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. See you next week.